At the center of the universe, at the border between the light and the dark, stands Castle Grayskull. For countless ages, the heroes of Grayskull have defended the universe against the forces of evil. Walk through the Hall of Living Pictures and learn the history and mystery of the Masters of the Universe. Dive deep into the mythology of Eternia, Etheria, and more. For those who know the stories of Grayskull will come the power. The power to be supreme. The power to be all-knowing. The power to be Legends of Grayskull.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 34 of Legends of Grayskull, the fan podcast where we discuss the history, the mystery, the magic and mythology of He-Man, She-Ra, Eternia, Etheria, Primus, Nordor, new adventures, old adventures, Filmation, jet lag, Netflix, anything and everything you can think of with that He-Man, She-Ra, Master of the Universe, Princess of Power, that little Mattel logo down there in the corner. I'm Matthew Duch. I'm here with Sean Scavarna. Sean, how we doing tonight?
I voted.
Yay!
Did you vote?
Of course I voted.
I know you voted, but I figured I'd start it out with that question.
Real quick, just for our listeners in case they missed last episode, quick explanation. Yes, we're at episode 34. We are switching to a regular format. We have gotten rid of the half episodes. If you want more information and a longer explanation, go see episode 33 we did last week. But the correct viewing order is episode 16 and a half, episode 33, and now 34. So you're where you need to be. And that's all I'll say about that tonight. So what did we vote
X
on,
marks the
Sean?
spot. We voted on Origins figures, which is... I made the complaint the other night after I did it, and our no prize winner extraordinaire Yuka actually was giving me a little crap, like, "Oh, they made you do this. Oh, they suckered you into it." It's like, it's kind of. I'll admit that is one of the more fun parts about the Origins line is they're giving the social media the attempt to have our voices heard from options they're throwing at us, at least.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, through the Masters of the Universe, the official blue checkmarked Facebook page, they started a contest here. They want the fans to decide who the next Origins figure is going to be in Wave 3. It would have to be, I assume. Could be. I'm not for sure. It could be Wave 4. It could be who knows what. But basically, they're looking for fans to decide one of the next ones. I'm assuming Wave 3. And so there's 4 characters, but it's bracketed. So we had two characters face off already. 2 characters will face off. I thought it'd be today, but I'm guessing tomorrow. They needed a day in between. But so yesterday, for 24 hours, fans could vote on whether they wanted Keldor or Anti-Eternia Man-at-Arms. And the Keldor is the multiverse Keldor. It's not the 2000X. It is not the exclusive. It is not the classics. It's very much that white shirted vest kind of Keldor that you saw in the multiverse miniseries. And then Anti-Eternia Man-Arms is obviously the black and red Man-Arms we saw from that series. So Sean, who'd you vote for?
I voted for Keldor, amazingly. I mean,
I did too.
Team Keldor, 2020, yep. Team Keldor. I know we talked about this in private, but it was one of those. It was one of those times when I saw the two of them. It's like, okay, we're getting a brand new figure that isn't even in classics. If you vote for Keldor, And you made a really good point of, well, then, you're basically just voting for a repaint Man-at-Arms. Right. And why would you start doing repaints this early in a line like this?
And I don't
agree.
even like that Man-at-Arms design, honestly. So it's like, why would I? Just me personally. If you guys liked it, if you voted for Anti-Eternia Man-at-Arms, perfect. But for me personally, I was the same way. I'm like, I don't even like that Man-at-Arms to begin with. why would I want to repaint of him? So,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the Keldor is just so unique. It's not just a simple Skeletor with a boot and a head swap. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty unique. So I had to give it to him.
Yeah, I forgot that it was bracketed. So I was thinking, and this is just me being me, but you see all four of them, and I'm like, I'm just gonna vote for the one. And I'm like, oh crap, it's just Keldor and Man at Arms. Well, yeah, I gotta do Keldor because
Right.
I we both have admitted we aren't the biggest fans of the multiverse comic,
No.
but it had a few moments. It had a lot of not great moments, but just the idea of, hey, that's like a cool idea that character could be out there for fans now
Right.
that like it, and
And honestly,
it-
I'm probably not. I don't know. And I know people are going to say that we're hypocrites here because both of us have stated that we're not really into the Origins line, but they gave us a chance to vote, and I'm going to vote, and
yeah.
so, and to me, it's like vote for the unique character,
Hmm.
over the repaint. That's just my. If push comes to shove, if you can't decide who to vote for, to me, it's always push for that new character. Um,
Sure.
Maybe I'm variant shy because of what 2000X did to us all, but I don't see the point in overloading this early on with variants, especially one like that. It's like I think honestly, I think Snake Man at Arms would have been a better choice than that because at least he's visually different, other than a color swap.
Hmm. Yeah, for me, I really had a hard time of like, okay, why would we get an anti-Eternia Man at Arms before we'd even get anti-Eternia He-Man in this line?
Right.
And so for me, I couldn't even justify like why would they do that? Like, I guess the only thing that says is it would open up like a line of, okay, we can do anti-Eternia everybody at some point, which for me
Yeah.
is like, like I like anti-Eternia He-Man in the way of my head canon,
Right.
but I don't necessarily need all the other figures as anti-Eternia characters either.
And
That's part of it.
yeah, and that's kind of the thing too. It's like with Keldor, okay, technically they are based on the anti-Eternia version, but you could still release that just as a Keldor for this line. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to Anti Eternia because that is a
Sure.
big concept to throw out here early in the line. So just release it as Keldor, and be done with it. But
Well, it's a strike while the iron's hot kind of a thing, I
right,
think, because of the idea, well, the story just ended and August they're releasing the figures, so it's still fresh in the minds of us fans. Um,
makes you
yeah,
wonder
I
if initially this was going to be a little earlier, this fan vote, if maybe it was supposed to coincide more with the end of the multiverse comic. You
it's
know,
possible, I'd say, and especially with everything that happened to make everything delayed this year, it
hmm
wouldn't surprise me. And I mean, again, yeah, hypocrite. I will
yeah.
admit every day of my life I am a hypocrite because there's so many things about like I'm a do as I say, not as I do
Yeah.
parent, which really drives I'm sure a lot of people crazy anyway. But in this case, it's like I don't have a dog in this race in a
Right.
sense, but I'm also like it's still fun to voice the
Right.
opinion.
I still
We're
have
on
an opinion.
podcasts. We're opinionated.
That's right. But yeah, it's just
So,
funny because we speculated all through the multiverse, comics that is it going to lead to something with Origins or is it going to lead to this or is it going to lead to that? And then now it actually comes out where one of the brackets is the anti-Eternia bracket, so
yep.
that was neat. So in the other side of the bracket, which once again the voting for Keldor and Man at Arms closed this morning, and Keldor won. I don't think we mentioned that. So he will move on to the next round.
Hmm.
Um, well, to the final. The next round should be the Eternia side, where it will be Wondar versus the mini comic deco of Triclops. So,
Yeah.
and then the winner from that one will then face off against Keldor to see who actually goes into production.
Hmm.
Um, and like I said, I thought they were going to follow up today with it, but since they didn't, I'm assuming they're taking a break in between. And so probably tomorrow will be that one. And then the day after that closes, I assume it will be seen. So today, Wednesday. So probably Thursday, probably like Saturday, you would look for the big vote, I'm guessing. But who do you like out of
Possibly.
that? Wondar versus Mini Comic Triclops.
I'm a Wondar guy. There's no way around that one. I mean, I've stressed it a few times on this show already, but with my figures and everything else
Yeah.
and story ideas and it's like for me, I think the mini comics trap or I
You
always do
keep
that
doing
Trapjaw.
that.
I do that to myself all the time. Trapjaw, Triclops, Trapjaw. I can't even do it twice. I'm not even going to do it three times. Um, yeah, mini comics Triclops is a figure I would have appreciated more in classics than worrying about it here. Although with the tagline of Origins, I see why
Yeah.
they did it.
Yeah, for me it's it was a tough choice. My knee jerk reaction was Triclops. But then once I actually got thinking about it, it's like, okay, but here again, like number one, I don't care for that mini comics coloring for Triclops. I think it's gaudy and I much prefer his actual like green standard release armor. I think it's much more striking. That's a Triclops I want. That being
Mm-hmm.
said, once I got to thinking, you can't tell me that they're not going to release a Triclops within the first, like, I say 5 waves, because they're releasing these things pretty quick. Like, it seems like,
Mm-hmm.
because Wave 2 is supposed to be out before the end of the year, and Wave 1's just hitting now. So they seem like they're going to go pretty boom, boom, boom. Um, so you can't tell me we're not going to get a general release Triclops in his regular armor, which is what I would want if I'm getting them. And let's be honest here, my kid loves that Skeletor. I'm probably going to end up getting a few more than what I initially intended to. Um, but so once again, to me, it comes down to okay, do we need 2 Triclops in this line, or should I go for at least, even though he is technically a repaint with new armor of He-Man, I still think Wondar is a unique character, and my boy Sean loves him. So so I've got to go Wondar here. I think it's the right
uh,
choice. Um,
yeah, I agree with you on the repaint or the variant idea already with this line. It's like I'd much rather see the actual here's a new character
mhm,
versus here's a new take on the character,
right.
and it works much better. But I actually one of the groups I'm in over on Podcasters of the Universe, Jeremy DeWitt actually had a moment, and it was
Mhm,
funny because he's been somebody ever since this line has been um, touted that this is
mhm,
going to happen. He went right to if it's not from the original stuff, then they shouldn't call it Origins.
sure.
So when they put these figures out there the other day, he's like, "Well, why would they even do Keldor? This is Origins. Why would they? It's like he's looking back at
Sure.
the old mini comics and the Alcala and the
Absolutely.
Texira and
Mhm,
everything, and
mhm. I get it.
the and I said to him, and I think this is what the actual mentality is behind the line, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I said to him, I feel like the way that they're looking at this line isn't necessarily they're going to go Savage Masters with this and start
Right.
it off like we found that out.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think what they're doing is it's whatever the first incarnation of something is what they're going to throw at you in this way because like the first time that we saw Keldor in Anti-Eternia is that version of Keldor, just like the first time you see Adam on Filmation is the Sky Sled Adam. So it's like
Mm,
it's a vague idea for the actual name of Origins, which is why I'm
I
like I don't know why they did it like that.
I will trump you right here, right now. Man at Arms has a mustache.
Nah, that's true, but that is the original way we saw him in Filmation, though. Although he doesn't have the second arm guard.
Yeah.
So,
So,
this is part of why this line doesn't appeal to me. It's the
yeah.
fact that I feel like it is very potluck. It's very much like you go into this line and you're thinking to yourself, well, it's called Origins, so everything might be Alcala inspired from the original mini comics, or the at least the up until the Trapjaw, Triclops, Ram Man stuff. And when you look at what they're doing, you're like, what?
Yeah.
And it's like we have Scareglow coming out before Scareglow was even introduced in anything. So it's like, well, what are you trying to do with the timeline and in introductions of these things? So that's the only thing I have left as a leg to stand on for what the logic is and how they're trying to make this line work.
I will say I do appreciate them changing up the order because you do get tired of seeing, you know, He-Man, Beastman, Man-Arm, Stratos, and then Tila, Evelyn. I like that they're mixing up the order and kind of throwing an Orko out there, a Scareglow out there earlier. They're talking about throwing a Keldor or Wundar potentially out there. Um, but yes, Origins in itself, that tagline is the biggest problem with this line because they released the 2-pack. It was very early mini comic, first DC comic, and then with the name Origins, everyone did exactly what you're doing. They're like, well, it's the first kind of like version of that character. But then all these inconsistencies started popping up, and then it's like, okay, well, this is the first of the Filmation origin, but without this, and this is this origin, and this, it's like, okay, so, and here's the biggest thing to me. They keep pushing this as this is your Origins line. This is Masters of the Universe Origins. Here's Origins Wave 2. Origins, Origins, Origins. Nowhere on that packaging does it say Origins anywhere. At all. Classics at least had it on their Masters of the Universe Classics. So it's like, to me, Origins is just kind of like an internal moniker that kind of stuck and has drifted out into, how we talk about it. But really, this toy line is just Masters of the Universe. When it's out there on the store shelves, kids are picking up, they're looking at it, they go, it's Masters of the Universe. So it's just another one of those weird things. I don't know where Mattel's going with this. I don't know what their directive is. It seems very potluck so far, but I do find that interesting that none of the material, except for like Facebook posts and revealing stuff and talking about it one-on-one, that's the only time you hear Origins. That's not in any of the other stuff, so it just it's a weird marketing strategy is I guess what I'm getting. The whole thing is just weird. No one can quite wrap their head around it.
Yeah, and the one thing that amused the heck out of me a little while ago was there is that post talking about when they're going to be released, and they have that shot of the He-Man figure.
Hang on. Aha!
There we go. That.
They
have that picture, and I'm amused to death to look at it and just go, who at Mattel's taking these photos? Like, what the heck is this all about?
So this is real quick here. This is once again from the Masters of the Universe Facebook page, verified with a blue check mark. It's a post of the He-Man Origins figure sitting on a shopping cart, and it says the wait is almost over for Origins action figures. Get He-Man, Skeletor, Man-at-Arms, Evelyn, Tila, and Beastman from Walmart starting on August 1st. So this was put out because everyone's like, oh my god, the online's selling out in like seconds. And this is to show, look, this is just early release. It's limited. August 1st is street date. That's when your Walmart shelves are going to be stocked. And I really do think they are because my Walmart has not restocked anything down the boys' aisle in literally 3 weeks now. Like, that thing is empty. You can tell they're getting ready for something. So I am really curious to see how much of this is actually in Walmart come August 1st. I think it might be a bigger section than we're expecting. But go ahead.
But the beauty of this is it reminds me of like a parent that's trying to sell their kid's toy on eBay. Yep. We have a He-Man in the shopping cart out of the box, and he has his harness on upside down, and it just makes me go like, this is Mattel. How do they not know how to make this work? I mean, it doesn't exactly strike confidence into somebody like me.
Not only is he wearing his harness upside down, he is also holding a very nice full power sword in gray, which would be very nice if it actually came with the figure.
Exactly.
But it doesn't. We got the half sword with the handguard, which is not what he's holding here at all. He is holding the San Diego sword.
Yep.
So, disappointing on many levels. And real quick here, I don't collect them. You haven't yet, but this is probably the coolest looking wave of Masters of the WWE Universe that they've shown so far.
Yep.
They released Wave 4. Man, see, they're cranking these out too. Like, for everyone who says that this is, a dead line, no one's buying it, and I don't know the numbers. I don't know whether they are or not, but all I know is personally at my Walmart, these things fly off the shelves, and they're already to Wave 4. Um, so we got, and I hope I get these names right because I am not a wrestling fan, but if I recall correctly, it's Jake the Snake Roberts, who's got he's got that cool posable snake, and I don't know if you saw, but he's got like a human face mask that puts on over his snake face, and you can take it
Okay.
on and off, kind of a King Hiss feature. I think
Sure.
he's got armor too that goes over his scaly chest, so you can like do the transforming thing. And then there's the Fiend is the guy in the upper right with the insane clown posse makeup going on there.
Yeah.
And right below him is I want to say Seth Rollins. The wrestling guys are probably like yelling at me right now. And he was really cool. Number one, to see the Zodak armor, which could be used for Wondar, obviously, or we should be getting a Zodak sooner or later. But he's also got Dragoman's sword. Did you notice that?
I did.
Yeah,
Nice touch.
that could be interesting. I don't own a Dragoman. If they release a Dragoman Origins, I might have to pick that guy up. And then last but not least, in the bottom left there is I pity the fool, Mr. T himself, with
Yeah.
a Fisto gauntlet and a Jitsu gauntlet on either hand, painted in gold.
Yeah.
Like that right there is like I don't even have words. Like, it's so out of left field. It's so crazy, but it so works, and it's so 80s and Masters and everything else. It's like, how can you not love that one?
It's like I said in one of the groups earlier tonight. Is Geldor versus Mr. T. You could finally go there and finally have them wreck each other. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I hate. Well, I shouldn't say I hate. I wasn't inspired to buy this line at all. Even for the people who are like, oh, I want to buy it so that I can have variant things or customize. And for me, I'm like, it's a new line. I'm not even worrying about customizing anything at this point. I'm not worrying about swapping, whatever. Mr. T might be the one that makes me go, I think I'm going to get this one at least. Because looking at him, it's like, like you said, this is 80s. This is 80s personified in this figure. And the fact that he has both Fisto and Jitsu gloves.
Yeah.
And everything, and he's wearing Jitsu's armor then and stuff. I don't know. There's just something about that one.
All the gold and everything. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I'll say, out of all the lines that they've introduced so far, this is the one that I could look at and go, it's starting to tip the scales a little more for me. Yeah. Like the Fiend, I don't know who the heck he is because I don't follow wrestling.
No,
but looking at him, he looks like somebody that I'd be like, yeah, he should be on Skeletor's side. And, I mean, the Wondar armor automatically makes me go, holy crap, that's, that automatically draws my eye to go, I want to have that. And then the other part of me is like, but if we get Wondar possibly. And I feel like I'm a long shot on that one, so we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, and it's neat looking at him and seeing what they could be used for. It's like, I mean, the Fiend, he's got those weapons that slide on over his hands, and they're obviously, I'd say more Roboto, but Roboto / Trapjaw. They got the little hooks on the side there to clip onto his belt, and it's not quite Roboto's axe, but it's close to it. And I can't remember anybody who had that mace, that spiked ball like that. I think that's just something completely new, but once again, you see how they're kind of prepping for the other characters. Down the line. the Jake the Snake, it's between Mr. T and Jake the Snake. I could honestly see myself picking up both of those because that is such a cool feature with like the faceplate that comes off and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a neat looking, like that figure just looks cool. I have no idea who Jake the Snake is, but that figure is just a nice paint deco and everything. And I believe that snake is actually posable, and I love little things like that. Like if I can get like this little posable snake that scales with the figures, like that's pretty neat, you know.
I'm amused by the more that we talk about this, the more you and I are starting to teeter.
Yeah.
She's like, well, I
Well,
guess these have to be on the shelf, you know?
because honestly, this I feel there from the previous waves there was like usually one I'm like that looks pretty cool. He went like I know Rey Mysterio, he looked really cool. I thought I could see him on the shelf, and I said that. The Undertaker Scare Glow looks awesome. He would fit in on any display. And then from the first line, I don't know, maybe the Triple H.
He's the one out of the first line that I'd say I could justify him
Right,
on the shelf because that helmet is cool enough to me that with that
right,
face mask
yeah, that one.
that like he'd be my Skeletor because I don't like the Origins figure for Skeletor. It's like I'll just pop off that head and put that on my Skeletor until they give me a new head for him. So
But I guess my point is for those first three waves, I'm like, okay, one guy looks cool. This wave, I'm like, you know what? All these guys look pretty masters. You
yeah.
know, like I think they're finally reaching. And we said that early on. We're like, well, are they a wrestling line or are they a masters line or are they, what are they? And this one, I think, really goes like, this is more towards the masters. Like I could see all these guys, hanging out, either fighting against or with the heroic warriors,
No.
So that's what's working for me here. Even the Seth Rollins, as boring as he is, like I don't know, they're just and for the customizers out there, like getting like because he's got that long hair and stuff, like getting a sculpt like that, long hair and the beard, like that could be used for some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So good job, Mattel. I'm gonna say good job on this. This looks like a solid lineup, even knowing nothing about wrestling and having basically no interest in these guys. So, yeah,
I will say though, this line always makes me curious. I don't know any of the new guys. I never followed wrestling past the '90s with Ultimate Warrior. I remember watching that on Sunday afternoons from time to time, and I knew Stone Cold, The Rock. Those
right.
were names that were always out there and all that kind of stuff. But I will say that it is one of those things. Like Mr. T today has made me go like,
Yeah,
well, now what are they going to throw into this? Because I wouldn't have equated Mr. T to being in this no matter what. I didn't realize
right.
he was even affiliated. So, like,
I think
okay,
I
what do we
think they
have looking?
said I think they said he did like one match back in the day, like one of those big like stunt event matches, but I could be completely wrong
Uh,
about that.
hmm,
Yeah.
interesting. And we're getting the Hulk Hogan
Yep.
pretty soon, and it's like a lot of these guys that you knew that were names one way or the other. It's
Yeah.
like I wonder what other people they're going to draw from, and then it makes me go, well, then what kind of accessory are they going to come with, and then I know there's people out there going, well, what about female figures, and they haven't even touched that yet, so
True. True. I didn't think about
should be
that.
interesting.
Yeah, I know some of the names from growing up, but I never followed it. I know one that somebody threw out there was Andre the Giant as like a Titus type giant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be
That
cool.
that could be pretty neat, a nice oversized figure.
Mm-hmm.
So real quick before we wrap up this kind of discussion here, so Keldor won. Where you both said one Dar in the one Dar versus Triclops, but let's just play devil's advocate here. Let's say Triclops wins the next round, and so the final is between Keldor and Triclops. Where's your vote at?
Hmm. Between the two of them, I won't lie, I'll probably go Triclops just because I wouldn't mind seeing the one thing they were saying is you can interchange the armor with classics. So there is that part
Yeah,
of me
it's
going,
pretty
well, I could pop off the armor on mine at home and
cool. Yeah.
have them displayed that way too, and that'd be kind of fun. But again, the variant idea is a little
Yeah.
like at the same time. So
Yeah. No, I think I'd still have to go with Keldor. I'd have to follow it through. All right, Keldor, you got this, you know?
yeah, all
So,
right.
and then so if it comes down to Keldor versus Wundar, where you go then?
Oh, you know where I'm going with that. Tila. No.
Teal. Right in vote.
No.
Do they have a right in vote spot?
Yeah, they have a right in vote spot, and it's like, I
Malactha.
want Lukey. No, definitely Wonder, because he's my boy. I always say he is the figure I wish I had when I was a kid, because how cool would it have been when I was a kid? I had brown hair, dark brown hair, almost black. It's like that would have been my He-Man
Yeah.
instead of the blonde guy. I would have been like, yeah, he looks like me, or whatever. But
Yeah, I think I'd probably have to go Wundar too if it came down to it. Just I don't know. He's grown on me over the past year or so, and maybe they can release a nice looking power sword with him instead of a half power sword.
well, and that's the thing. If they actually do the Power Sword similar to classics, I'm completely in anyway, because that's like one of my favorite versions of the Power
Yeah,
Sword.
that is a nice one. The black with the gray and everything.
Yeah,
Just a nice
it's
looking
metal,
power sword.
as Kevin Smith would say. It's metal.
It's
So
metal.
I feel like such a dad saying it too. That's pretty rough.
All right, so let's move on here. So now we've got our review for the week. So this week we are doing the Masters of the Universe Kids Stuff book, Battle Under Snake Mountain. This was written by John Braden. It was illustrated by Pablo and Judith Marcos. And it was published in 1986. So towards the end of the line, this one is heavily featuring the Snake Men. Well, exclusively featuring the Snake Men. So, and this one was fun. I had this one as a kid. I had the tape version. I didn't have any records as a kid. But this one was actually my first introduction to the Snake Men. It's a very well done book, in my opinion. I love the colors throughout it and the drawings. There's a lot of energy. What about you, Sean? Did you have this one as a kid or no?
Yeah, I remember the cover very well. I don't, to be honest, listening to it for the show, I don't remember the book though.
Oh no.
As in, like, I don't remember the recording. I might have. I don't think I would have just gotten the book if it came with a record or a tape or something. But maybe I wasn't playing it as much or something as I did with other ones earlier in the line. So,
But
but
you remembered the story, right? You just didn't remember the audio.
I didn't remember the story even.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was kind of like, oh, okay, like for like I don't know why I remember that cover very vividly, and beyond that, I didn't remember much, but I went on a couple sites tonight to look at the interiors,
Yeah.
and there is one page that when we get to it, I'm going to point out and go, I remember that too,
Yeah.
and I'm amused by that page, to be honest. But yeah, the art, I remember enjoying the art quite a lot once I started looking through the pages again and stuff. But the story never stuck with me quite the same way as the other ones did.
Yeah, this is one I remembered all the way through, even growing up and out of it and everything. When I picked it back up, I'm like, I remember this. And, there are some weird inconsistencies in here, but, it's a pretty solid story. And just a little bit of trivia, Pablo and Judith Marcos are actually a father and daughter team of illustrators.
That's cool.
They work together on, I know they did this one. I'm pretty sure they did Prisoner in the Slime Pit, and I think a couple other ones. And the interesting thing about this one too is it is a kid stuff book, whereas a lot of the Golden books and stuff, they were also released under kid stuff when they had the record or the tape with them. This one, as far as I can tell, was only released by kid stuff, as in there is not a version of this without the record or tape, without the see the pictures, hear the story, read the book. So that's kind of interesting. And as far as I can tell, this has nothing to do with Golden at all. So not like the earlier ones where it could either be published as a Golden book or a kid stuff book, depending on if it had the recording. So
Mm-hmm.
it'd be kind of neat to find out what happened. Maybe Golden lost the license and kid stuff picked it up or something, or they just decided to start making their own on top of the stuff they did for Golden. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, the other thing too is especially you said this came out in '86.
86, yep.
Some of that stuff maybe their license ran out with it or something by that point, because 86, 87 was starting to get into like,
Yeah.
the declining years, whereas like a lot of the Golden stuff I remember was like the early stuff.
Yeah.
So the ones coming out like around now, it's kind of hit or miss for me to even remember this stuff.
Yeah. No, I think it's pretty much these kid stuff books now. Like this one features a snake man. And the other big one that they did was Prisoner in the Slime Pit, and that one featured the Rock People and the Horde, obviously, because the Slime Pit's there. But
Yeah.
and I got another funny story, but I'll get into it after we actually read the story. It'll make more sense in case our viewers haven't read this one before. Well, I say read. Actually, what we're gonna do is we're gonna listen along. I'm gonna pop in. I got my cassette player right over here. Let me just pop in the tape, and we're gonna listen to it just like the old days.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Hi everybody. This is your Masters of the Universe read-along book. Every time you hear the chime, it means it's time to turn the page in your storybook. Now, if you are ready, we will start the story Battle Under Snake Mountain. Don't forget to turn the page every time you hear the chime. Okay, here we go.
Here we go. I did it!
Of all the places on Eternia, none is more frightening than Snake Mountain. This is the stronghold of the evil warriors, King Hiss, Rattler, and Tongue Lasher. Few people on Eternia are brave enough to travel to Snake Mountain. The ones who have been there and live to return tell of a terrifying noise that echoes through the caves, and of trapdoors, prisons, and a giant snake that guards the mountain. Beneath Snake Mountain are miles of twisting tunnels which wind down into the rock below. It is there, in his dark chamber, that King Hiss plans his evil schemes. Come now, if you dare, far beneath Snake Mountain, to the room where King Hiss is meeting with Rattler and Tongue Lasher. Let's listen in and see what these three snake men are up to now.
All right, so obviously very much or very reminiscent of that 83 record, it was not a book, that we already covered and that you're very much a fan of.
Yeah, and for this one, just when you hear the narration and stuff, it does have that. It's not quite to the same level of detail the way that they did it on the record, but it still has that. The narrator, I really, really wish I could have met this guy for real, because he to me would be the equivalent of meeting like Alan Oppenheimer or a John Irwin, because his voice is just, it's there. Like, it's part of my childhood, and listening to the record and listening to this, it's like, that's why I'm grinning. If you're watching the video, I'm just grinning through the whole thing, because it's just like, this is that old grandpa voice that wanted to tell you something cool about something you loved. Right. And that just, I would just want to shake this guy's hand and be like, thank you for making this stuff come alive for me like this.
It is written, if you recall, this was written by John Braden, John
Yeah.
Braden did write that 83 record as well, if you recall.
Hmm.
So it's the same writer. There's a
Yeah.
rumor out there that John Braden was the narrator on that, and this is
Yeah.
obviously the same narrator, even though his voice sounds a little different. But you also got to think this is 3 years later, and I
Yep.
know he was up there in years, but I think I'm definitely confident with saying that this is the same narrator. So it's quite
Hmm.
possible that this is John Braden. That I have nothing to go on but speculation. But yeah, you could just tell it's just that same feel, that same flow. They got the background noises. They've got the little oohs and ahs and
Hmm.
everything, and the illustrations done wonderfully here. The Snake Mountain very toy like, but they got the demon mouth all like crag. It looks like saliva's like dripping down and stuff. Very menacing.
Yeah.
But they do
Yeah.
they do put it solidly as the home of the Snake Men here. King Hiss, Rattler, and Tongue Lasher. This is their base, so
Hmm.
a little
Yeah.
continuity, but that was expected.
Well, the way that they wrote it, it almost has this feeling of they're squatters though, and I kind of dig that.
Yeah,
In it, it's like they're underneath it. They're not actually in
true.
Snake Mountain and all that. They're in these tunnels underground, and that kind of gives them a little more of like a creepiness factor in that way. And I don't know what your take is on it, but the music and the production value that they put into the effects already are making me smile. But like when I was listening to this, there is certain moments where I could almost hear other songs from the '80s with the way that some of these songs,
Yeah,
like there's certain notes here and there. Then all of a sudden I start thinking, like at the very end they had that do 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 kind of thing. I'm
yeah.
like, so now we're gonna do Chariots of Fire. And it's like do 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 do
I
do. I
didn't
can't
think
help it.
about
It's just
that.
there. But
Yeah,
yeah, I love this about it because it just it's. I love that your mind turns it into your own little playground, but they're aiding it on with these little bits and pieces like
oh,
that. So big fan.
absolutely. All right, let's turn the page like our chime told us to.
Rattler, Tongue Lasher, come forward out of the shadows, ordered King Hiss, seated on his throne. I feel better when you are both within my sight. King Hiss's red eyes gleamed, and his muscular green body rippled in the half-light of the torches. He was in his human form, but this was a disguise. He could change at will into a writhing mass of yellow serpents. Tongue Lasher and Rattler stepped forward. Rattler's quick strike head was in its resting position now. He wouldn't dare extend it in the presence of King Hiss. His long tail dragged behind him and twitched from left to right, as it always did when he was nervous. Beside Rattler stood Tongue Lasher. His muscular purple and black body glistened, and his long green tongue flicked in and out of his mouth. Together, the two evil snake men walked slowly forward toward King Hiss's throne.
You sent for us, great king,
spoke the two snake men together.
Yeah, I see what you're saying here. I didn't think of it before. Yeah, they're definitely like down in Snake Mountain. So yeah, that still
Hmm.
works. Um, I love the descriptions of everybody here. I mean, you can tell obviously they're like, okay, you need to promote these toys, but I mean, he gets it. Like he's not just phoning it in. He's making Rattler nervous and talking about his he wouldn't dare to extend his neck in King Hiss's presence. Like you get this feel that like these characters have a history. They're not just hey buy this action figure down the aisle.
Yeah, it's characterization that works for me, and it also it does a really good job with that little bit to show this is their place and rank,
Right.
and And I actually really liked that line about he wouldn't dare extend his neck in front of King Hiss. I like that because that would be like a power play move,
Right.
and then it's like, well, King Hiss is the alpha. That's all there is to it. And,
Right.
and the other thing about, like you were saying about the artwork, even with like the mouth of the cavern for Snake Mountain and stuff. And if you look at the way that not only the artists render things, but the colorists render this. I don't know if there's a different colorist than the actual father-daughter group that did it.
It's not listed, but who knows?
Well, there is this, because they have highlights the way they have, there is this almost feeling of they're glistening more than you would expect other things to look and all this. And I really like that about this, because this whole book, I remember when I was a kid, the little I do remember, it made me actually think everybody was slimy in this. Yeah. And this is the first page of them opening. It's like, yeah, there is this like serpenty, like glistening to it. So. Oh,
for sure. And like the majority of this book takes place like underground. So you've also got that kind of darkness there. It's like, the look at all the flames in that shot, just lighting the cavern that they set up in here with his throne and everything. And it's like that you get that through the whole thing. It takes place at night and in these underground tunnels, and you got this kind of darkness to it. Lots of shadows, lots of glistening from the snakes, and you get the feeling like they are all slimy snakes. With King Hiss going, I feel better when you are both within my sight. Like, yeah, I know you guys. If I show any sign of weakness, you're going to try and take over. That's how evil they are and untrustworthy. So, and I like they did lots of 2-page spreads in this book too, which is really neat. Lots of text and everything, which is neat for the kids' books. But I think they were banking on the fact that most kids would actually like listen along. Because there's a lot of dialogue, text in this book. So.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know why these bad guys never trust their guys they're with. It's like they're evil or something. Like it's amusing to. I do like that line though about the I feel better when I can see you and all that. It's it just goes to show you, like, no matter what rank you're dealing with, Skeletor, Hordak, or King Hiss. It's like, yeah, these guys don't trust the people that are with them. They freelance. They do their thing. So, exactly. So, here's one thing though. I'm not trying to go down the negative trail, but one thing that I realized listening to this and going forward throughout this is I think the book to make me go, I don't like the Snake Men. And we'll get into that a little bit as we go. I'm not trying to hold us up on this page. But this was definitely the one where, like, I appreciate the narration, I appreciate all the details and stuff like that. But there's things about this where I'm like, I remember this being one of those Snake Men just aren't doing it for me, like Hordak or Skeletor in Masters. So
well, let's carry on and find out why.
King Hiss stood up and stepped forward. From his elevated position, he towered over his evil helpers. He leveled his beady eyes at the two, then spoke.
I have a task for you two. My snake scouts have recently discovered an amazing new cave. It is a natural formation in the underground rock that runs for miles and miles. The bottom of the cave is filled with water. A swirling river which leads many miles beyond Snake Mountain. You two will be pleased to learn where the cave ends.
Tongue Lasher and Rattler looked at each other, their wicked eyes filled with curiosity.
And where is that, King Hiss?
Asked Rattler, as his long red neck stretched upward slightly.
The river cave is directly beneath Castle Grayskull. From that point, we can mount a full-scale attack on the castle and on key land.
Tongue Lasher grew excited. His slimy tongue flicked in and out faster than usual as he cried, "This is indeed good news, Great King. We await your command."
Yeah, so pretty basic plan there.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like every version of He-Man has some sort of underground episode there with tunnels going to Snake Mountain. So and I never question, even knowing the Abyss, from the Filmation series, I'm still like, okay, yeah, sure, this is an underground tunnel. As a kid, I never even questioned it. I do like how they give all the Snake Men very unique voices. I think Rattler's probably works the best for me. King Hiss's is a little too slow, and Tongue Lasher's is a little too all over the place. But I really like what they did with Rattler. At least they tried to do something other than just generic bad guy or Cobra Commander Part 2,
Yeah, I might as well get into it starting here then. So like listening to this by itself without the visual, because you gave me the YouTube link and I listened to it that way. I had a hard time wanting to keep listening because the way that the actors just speak on this thing, especially for the Snake Men, I'm like, oh my God, get to the point. Like, I'm not a big, okay. I don't like teams where everybody's the same thing. And I know there's a variety of snakes, but they're all snakes. So that's part of why I'm not a big Snake Man fan. I like it where, there's the diversity in both Skeletor and the Horde. I like that. You have all these different characters and they're all like a hodgepodge and all that, and it works for me. And like even when I was a kid, when this came up, I had King Hiss and I had Tongue Lasher, and I never worried about anybody else.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's like I wasn't a big fan of them, and then on top of that, listening to the voice actors, and it's mostly them doing that every time there's an S, and I'm like, you're only prolonging the dialogue, dude.
Yeah.
Like it's like remember the vortex. It's like that's how it feels every time the S's are on these things.
Did you hear the vortex sound effect started this page off? It took all the will in me to not go the vortex, because it was that same woo. But yeah, Rattler's works the best for me. But to me, like looking at the page here and seeing how menacing they look, Rattler's like sharpening his claws there, like ready to just gut He-Man, basically.
Yeah.
It's just like, I guess that's what makes me give it the pass. But yes, King Hiss definitely like today, Junior. Like.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like this record, I love these records for the fact that it does make your mind go into like the old radio shows, and like I actually thought about like how cool would it have been to have like a He-Man radio show. Like if this wasn't from the 80s and it was from a different time, I would have sat there just like grinning like an idiot, just waiting for the He-Man show to come on, and whatever. Sure. And these are examples of how it could have been done. But yeah, this one for me, it's like the artists are really truly bringing this up to a level that I feel it's more palatable when you're looking at the pictures. In the case of this, the audio in this case, while I love the production value in it, like the Snake Men parts are just dragging it down for me. Like I would love for us to get to more. Let's see some action, because even with the LP record, I felt like we got to the point a little faster than some of this stuff in here right now. So,
all right, well, let's see if we can get to the point for Sean.
We'll see.
King Hiss knew exactly what he wanted his two evil helpers to do. He led them to the cave and ordered,
"Take this barge and sail the river to its end. Study the caves carefully. Then return and tell me the best way to attack the castle. When you return, the three of us, plus an army of snake men, will sail back to Castle Grayskull. Then we can tunnel up through the soil and into the castle from beneath. He-Man will be caught off guard, and we will capture him. Then Castle Grayskull and all the knowledge it holds will be in our possession. He-Man may have stopped us in the past, but this time we will win.
Smiling wickedly, Tongue Lasher and Rattler bowed low before King Hiss, then turned and slithered toward the flat-bottomed barge tied up nearby. They knew that the strong current in the river would carry them to their secret spot beneath Castle Grayskull.
You never realize how many S's are in Masters of the Universe and Castle Grayskull and everything else until Sean points out how much they slow it down.
I am the worst at stuff like this because, like, I'm like this when my wife and I would watch movies. I would point stuff out, and she'd be like, "Thanks for ruining it for me, jerk."
Right.
You know?
That's exactly
and it's like I'm that
is,
guy right now to you, unfortunately. But that's like this whole sequence. I was like, I'm gonna fall asleep if they don't get to the point because this guy and the delivery of how King Hiss talks. Like, I was thinking about it just now. Like, if he's supposed to look like that.
Yeah.
I really wish they wouldn't bother doing the S's drawn out because then it doesn't even imply he's hiding something. You know, like I don't mind the dual voices. There's something to that I think that would have been enough of a curiosity. But don't do the S's because that's just like it's too obvious that you're trying to hide that you're a snake. And you know, the other ones, it's like, all right, fine. They don't talk a lot, but they give King Hiss, like, here's the boatload of the narrative, and we have to make this 20 minutes, so stretch this out as far as you can. You know?
I was going to point that out, too. It's neat if you look on the pages, like, King Hiss is the only one that, like, stands upright during this. Like, he's straight up, and Rattler and Tongue Lasher are always kind of, like, leaning or, you know, hunched over or, you know... They're very animalistic in that sense, except for King Hiss. He's straight up, you know, here's what you're going to do. So, yeah, I can agree with you. Let's see if there's less S's on the next page. I know there's at least less King Hisses, so that might help Sean.
Where's a friendly face?
Meanwhile, inside Castle Grayskull, He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe, paced back and forth across the stone floor. He had been worried all day, but didn't know why. Now, he wondered aloud.
I don't know what's the matter with me. For the past day or so, something's been bothering me. Something I can't put my finger on. Over the last few years, though, I've learned to trust my instincts. When I'm in a mood like this, it usually means that something evil is afoot on Eternia.
The hour was late, and He-Man was tired after a long and troubling day. No sooner was he in bed than he was sound asleep. While He-Man slept, the evil snake men on board the barge drifted ever closer to Castle Grayskull. Rattler and Tongue Lasher stood on the deck, their legs astride, as the giant boat floated through the dark underground cave.
All right, so less S's drawn out. So I like that they went back to that. That basically looks like the Castle Grayskull from like the sheet set, like that early, very toy-esque Castle Grayskull. You know, they didn't really put their own spin on it. He-Man sleeping in the castle. So a few weird things here and there, but and the funny thing is. You know, and it just occurred to me now because we were talking about a minute ago is, so 83, John wrote that record, and now he's writing this, and He-Man mentions, over the last few years, I've learned to trust my instincts. It's kind of a little, maybe a little meta there, like, to John, this is like He-Man's journey, like it started in the record, and now he's here writing it, you know?
Yeah. And now he is a tenant. at Grayskull apparently, which that's one of those like, okay, like with you doing the timeline, it's like, okay, originally it was Prince Adam,
Yeah.
and he does the change and everything just like Filmation, except the wording was a little off. And it's like Grayskull was, it took him all night to get to it, and now he's just living there, I guess, or something. And it's like, okay, when did this change happen? I don't, and this is only 3 years after the last one, so it's like, all right. But
yeah, it would have been nice to actually be able to meet with John. Unfortunately, he did pass away. Actually, back in the 80s, he passed away. So, to kind of think what the thought process was here, or was there, or was he just kind of given like, you have to promote these figures and do something with them, and he kind of put his own spin on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I had any like knowledge of what he did, I think the way that it makes sense from like a conciseness and story is, well, if he didn't live at Grayskull at this point, then the whole concept of, okay, we're talking about Snake Mountain, and then you have to have the other place set. You have Grayskull,
right?
And then you have He-Man and the Snake Man. That's all you need. You're not going to set the stage for anything else where he has to go from the palace to Grayskull and all this other. It's like the last episode. We're going from here to there to there. And it's like it's more concise. So.
Yep. And as a kid, I just rationalized it like, okay, he was tired after the day. He was worried that something might be afoot, so he decided to stay the night in Castle Grayskull. That's how I, in my head, that's how I rectified it.
Sure.
So we got Tongue Lasher and Rat Lore. Let's see what they're going to do on the next page.
How wide the river is now, hissed Rattler as he piloted the barge through a series of small rapids. Standing at the front of the barge, Tongue Lasher held a torch high. Its red glow cast twisting shadows on the jagged rocks which lined the cave. Smaller snakes and serpents wisped silently out of the water and onto the slimy rocks as their two great leaders passed.
Before the dawn waits, He-Man, we will be under Castle Grayskull,
hissed Rattler. Yes, agreed Tongue Lasher. And from there, we will find the way that leads to the castle. Then we will return to King Jis and tell him what we have learned. He will be most pleased. When we all return, He-Man will be captured, and Castle Grayskull will belong to his snake men.
Did you hear that?
Or a few more times, or
that was a prime example of what I'm talking about. That whole section, I can't help it. I mean, they had so many S's in there that I'm just like, oh my god! And halfway through Tongue Lasher talking, all I kept thinking was, all that they need is to just talk, and He-Man will just punch him right in the face. And it's like, I wasn't done saying my lines or something. It's just like, you guys bore me. Like, geez, it's taking forever to get to the point.
Yeah, you don't have to hit every S that hard. Just a couple here and there would suffice.
Yeah. And like at the end, if it's the end of a sentence, trail it off with that. But don't keep doing that. It's just, it's wow, is it annoying after a while.
You know what I'm saying. It's
of
course a little ridiculous. I will say, though, this is one of the best pages of the book here. I love them, like, coasting down the rapids with the torch and the snakes and creatures, And I like that they put in there, like, they're actually, like, minions of the Snake Men. Like, not only do they have, like, the humanoid snakes, but they've got all these weird little creatures that are, like, yes, sir, General Rattler. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a neat concept to have this whole army of just all shapes and sizes. I like that.
And with the sound, the audio of it, although the actors are driving me nuts with
Yeah.
this S thing that they're doing for the cliche snake thing, but they have that way of the echo in it makes you
Yeah.
feel like you're getting claustrophobic in those caverns.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoy that aspect too, where it's like the sound is giving you the idea of, they're in these deep, dank places and stuff. At least that's where it makes my mind go to.
Oh, absolutely. All right, let's get to nighttime He-Man.
The next morning, when He-Man woke, he felt much better.
I'm glad that mood has passed. It must have been my imagination. I see nothing evil.
He-Man has many powers, but even the most powerful man in the universe cannot see through stone. If he could, he would have been surprised to see Rattler and Tongue Lasher in the castle beneath his room. During the night, they had made their way through the maze of underground tunnels beneath Castle Grayskull. Rattler whispered to his evil friend,
Time to go. We must return to Snake Mountain and tell King Hiss we have found the way to He-Man's private chambers. Tonight we will return with an army of snake men and capture He-Man.
As they turned to go, Tongue Lasher hissed, "Have a nice day, He-Man. We'll see you later, and we'll have a little surprise party in your honor."
You know what though?
Oh,
I like
God.
that weird laugh he does. Like they could have easily just gone like a ha 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 ha, like it is in the text, but he made it his own.
That was the equivalent of somebody trying to start a mower. They're trying to pull the cord and nothing's happening, but you. Just, oh my God! So
It's like the
this
creepy
is the
little troll
page.
laughter.
Yeah. I mean, well, and considering what they're doing here with the whole, it's almost like this weird voyeur thing, and that's
Yeah.
where I get to the point of like, it's not meant to be funny. I'm laughing because it's like I can't take these voices, but they're making even their laughter prolonged, which is like, oh my
Yeah.
God, you're killing me. But it does. It's got this. There's a creepiness factor that Skeletor doesn't even do. They're going to lengths that others wouldn't, and you're just sitting there going, I feel kind of dirty that they're looking in on him and they know this and that, and he's not able to understand what's happening around him. But this is the page
Oh
that
yeah,
I was
yeah.
going to
No,
say.
this one sticks with you. It's for those of you listening on our audio. It's a page. It's got the top. It's a 2-page spread, but it's split into halves. The upper half and the lower half. The upper half is He-Man waking up out of bed, the sun shining in the window, and you can actually see the stone floor. And beneath it, you see Tongue Lasher and Rattler in their boat, spying up through the cracks in the floor there and realizing where they found. And
Mm-hmm.
it's got this like horror movie quality, like when you can see over the girl's shoulder that Jason's back there or something. Like that's what's going on here. It's like this is creepy. Like he was sleeping and they were right there, and he's just waking up
Mm-hmm.
going about his business, and Tongue Lasher's literally right below his bedside table.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I do like what they did with the voices. Besides the prolonged S's, I like the weird echoes and stuff, and I like what Tongue Lasher did there, where he kind of took the ha 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 and made it into like his own. He's this creepy little monster under the floor, like like we're gonna get you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, this is great.
But the thing that got me, even when I was a kid, this was the one where it automatic flashback.
Yeah.
He's got the H over his bed.
Yes.
And that's the part that gets me the most.
Yep, the battle armor H, not
Yes.
the regular chest harness symbol. He's got the battle armor H carved in. He's got it carved into Dragon Walker. He's got it carved into his bed. It's those are his things. Don't touch them.
Exactly. I was going to say, this is mine. You know,
Right.
This is my race car bed. You will not sleep in my race car bed.
Sleep in it. Oh, it's great here. This is a beautiful splash page. Oh, so let's see what they do back at Snake Mountain.
Once Rattler and Tongue Lasher were back at Snake Mountain, they told King Hiss what they had learned. The evil king of the Snake Men seemed pleased.
You have done well. Very well indeed. And He-Man knows nothing of your digging under his room. Are you certain of that?
The all-powerful He-Man will be totally surprised by the little visit we have planned,
answered Rattler.
I can assure you of this.
Splendid.
Hissed the king.
What are we waiting for? To the barge. By this time tomorrow, He-Man will be my prisoner, and Castle Grayskull will be under the control of the Snake Men.
So, after calling together a small army of Snake Men, King Hiss, Rattler, and Tongue Lasher made their way through the secret underground tunnel which led to the river cave.
Is that a good amount of SS for you, Sean? You doing okay?
Oh, I'm getting through it. The Tongue Lasher sound effect is really creepy too.
Yeah.
That like, I guess it's just to show his tongue keeps popping in and out.
The flicking.
The flicking and all that. It's just like, it's a little unnerving at points when you listen to it. I'm like, ugh.
Right.
It all adds, for me at least, it all adds to the ugh of the Snake Men in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like here what they did with the throne. You could see it a little bit in the earlier parts, but especially here where he's actually got like four snake heads on his throne, and like he's the fifth snake head, you know.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing his big transformation that'll be coming up here. You know, it's a really neat design.
Like I said, these artists are they're carrying a lot of the weight of this for me.
Right.
Like, really, because listening to it with just audio, but this is working better.
Absolutely. All right, let's see what happens.
He-Man spent a busy day rock climbing and practicing battle maneuvers with Man-at-Arms. For the first time, He-Man ignored his instincts that warned him of danger. That was an error He-Man would soon regret. For later that evening, when he was sound asleep in his bed, King Hiss's Snake Men loosened the stones of He-Man's floor and pushed one stone free. Silently, King Hiss, Rattler, and Tongue Lasher crept to He-Man's bedside. Using a special venom poison, King Hiss rubbed a few drops of the fluid onto He-Man's hand. Soon the most powerful man in the universe was helpless. He was in a deep trance and paralyzed.
Carry He-Man to the barge,
shouted King Hiss.
We will return with him to Snake Mountain. Once I have him in chains there, we can begin our conquest of Castle Grayskull.
All right. Solid plan. You kind of get the feeling that Man-at-Arms is hanging out there too. Like maybe they all hang out in Grayskull at this point.
It's not a, it's Grayskull. It's a tavern and it's a hotel and it's the Eternian. What's the? I want to say Super 8 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
We'll leave the light on for you.
There was, I think, in the UK stories, I want to say there was like a story where they did, like all the heroic warriors did move to Grayskull because for that reason, because Eternos actually got like destroyed and they had to rebuild, and so they figured to try and keep the people of Eternos safe, they would move to Castle Grayskull, basically taking the fighting away from the royal palace.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah,
I like that.
So, but yeah, for me, it's just like, well, why didn't they just take over Grayskull right now? They got He-Man, he's paralyzed. It's like, why the need to bring him back? So maybe Man-Arms is hanging out there too.
Yeah, that's when this part happened. That it was one of those. Why don't they just kill him? Like, I mean, they got him right there.
Wow.
He's one of the biggest ops. I know why they don't for kids. I get it. But in my head, I'm like, well, why don't they do something that takes him out to the point where he's not going to even have anything in the rest of the story? And like that. That's on you, Hiss, man. You had your chance. He's asleep.
Right,
I mean, for the love of God, Skeletor at least gives him that. He lets him sleep. But this too also brings up. I don't think this has an Adam in it anymore. It's just flat out just He-Man all the time.
I'll throw the same as the '87 movie. It's like, okay, it doesn't not have an Adam. Like, you don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't say Adam doesn't exist. There is a power sword there. So, yeah. No, there's no transformation or anything. So,
no transformation, and even when they grab him from his sleep, he's wearing He-Man stuff.
Yeah,
he's not
he's
wearing
still He-Man.
Stuff.
He was definitely sleeping at Grayskull as He-Man, but that doesn't necessarily negate an Adam, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
If I don't see it, it didn't happen.
Well, there's that. Yeah, I mean, you can take it either way. I don't think there's a wrong answer here, but this plan is creepy. Like, we're just basically they're abducting him. They're abducting him in his sleep. Like, as a kid, this freaked me out. Like, oh my god! Like, what if the snake man creep into my room tonight and just grab me and take me out?
That's the beauty of it. Like, it played upon the fears, and like back in those days, that was a huge one.
Oh yeah.
My mom was always on me like an eagle, like eagle-eyed wherever I was in the neighborhood playing with the kids, because it was that was when that got to be like a huge deal where people, kidnapping and Just Say No were like the two big deals you dealt with when you were growing up in the 80s. And
absolutely.
I agree with this because it's like, if you're asleep and somebody took you and you don't know what the hell's happening, that'd be one of the scariest things that I could think of.
Absolutely. If it can happen to He-Man, it can happen to us.
Exactly.
Let's hope He-Man gets
We're
out.
all doomed. We're all doomed.
Although He-Man's eyes were open, he was helplessly paralyzed and could not move or speak. But his brain was still functioning as he thought.
I can't let them take me to Snake Mountain. I've got to fight their poison and get my strength back.
But it was no use. King Hiss's poison was too powerful. For now, He-Man was a helpless prisoner. Rattler and Tongue Lasher carried He-Man to the barge and tied him up. Then they set sail for Snake Mountain with their prisoner. King Hiss taunted He-Man, saying,
"Where is your power now, mighty He-Man? Gone. Now I have the power. All the power."
But even as he spoke, King Hiss was making a terrible mistake. He was underestimating He-Man's power. Already, He-Man could feel the effects of the venom poison starting to wear off. And he thought to himself,
I'll pretend to still be under the poison's effect. It will take several hours to reach Snake Mountain. By then, I should be wide awake and have all my strength back. Old Fangface and his friends will be really surprised when I make my move.
I like the cockiness, He-Man.
I like that he actually used old Fang Face because it makes you think
Yeah.
of, old Bone Brain and Bonehead and everything
Yep.
else like he gives Skeletor crap about. And but yeah, the part, like, just going back to what we were just talking about, like,
Yeah.
it's like those people have sleep paralysis,
Mhm.
and like for me that would have been like nightmarish to be like, I can see everything, but I can't even scream for help or whatever.
Right.
I was like, holy, that would just be terrifying.
Yeah, and the way they draw him there with all tied up all around his face is just like, it just, like you said, just paralyzed. Like, and I know everything they're saying, I know everything they're doing, but there's nothing I can do about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just gotta sit there and wait and hope that they don't decide to eat him before that.
Well, they didn't even get into that until 2000X, and
No,
that's when
I
I actually gave
know.
cred to the Snake Man. I was like, holy crap, they're eating people. That's
Yeah,
better than just, hey, we're Snake Man
yeah,
and all that stuff. So,
but they didn't say they wouldn't eat him, so they might. Who knows?
in my head, I never even went there because I just didn't think
No.
about them that much, apparently.
I really thought that they were. I was worried about He-Man getting killed in this one as a kid, though. I remember that, like, because you're sitting there like he is paralyzed, he can do nothing, and they are snakes, and I've always hated snakes, you know. So it's like, man, if they bite him right now, that's it. He's done for, you
Yeah.
know. So
So, holding very still, He-Man pretended to be unconscious during the trip back up the underground river which led between Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain. His eyes were still closed when he felt the barge being tied up to the dock, and he knew they had arrived beneath Snake Mountain. At that moment, He-Man heard King Hiss shout to his snake men,
Take our guest to the dungeon and chain him up. I will visit him tomorrow and show him how we treat our visitors here at Snake Mountain.
It was then that He-Man sprang into action.
Not so fast, you scaly serpents!
He shouted as he jumped up.
I'll be checking out of this snake hole a little early.
What? He-Man is awake?
Screamed King Hiss.
Gods! He's in.
The moment King Hiss realized that He-Man was awake, he shed his skin, revealing the many snakes beneath his outer skin. Rattler coiled his head back, ready to strike, while Tongue Lasher's dangerous tongue flicked out angrily. King Hiss and his evil friends were ready to fight.
Try it, you snakes!
Yelled He-Man as he leaped off the barge and began battling the Snake Men. He-Man had all his power back now, and he was angry. As the Snake Men attacked him, he easily picked them up and threw them into the cold water. Rather than fight He-Man personally, King Hiss, Rattler, and Tongue Lasher hurried away into a tunnel that led inside Snake Mountain. There, they could hide and be safe.
those cowardly snakes.
His nicknames aren't quite as impressive as the last page though on this one. It's just
No,
you scaly
no.
serpents. It's like that didn't really hurt them inside though, did it, He-Man?
They are. Oh,
Oh,
but it's nice drawing here. He-Man fighting a couple random snake warriors, and it's the King Hiss and everybody just turning tail.
mm-hmm.
Which I will say, that's probably the one disappointing part about this is basically He-Man just breaks free of his bonds and they run away. That's the one thing I can say. I wish there was a little bigger of a battle here, really showcasing, Tongue Lasher, Rattler, and King Hiss. Because they can be formidable enemies. I mean, they're snakes. They have awesome powers. That's probably the one thing this book is missing to me.
Yeah, for me, I agree with that because it takes until this moment to have action, really, except for
Yeah.
when you see Man at Arms and him training, which I don't count that
No.
compared to what happens during the story to make him take action. And when you see this, like we got to this page, I'm like, yeah, he's doing something, and then it's basically he's just throwing people around, and it's like it's such a very quick resolution
Yeah.
that it just feels like this is a slow burn of a story like crazy. And as a
Mhm.
kid, that's maybe why I don't remember it, because it just took forever to get to something to happen. And once it does, it ends. That
Yeah.
it's like that's it. But this is another example, like listening to King hiss at the gods and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I really wanted to hear He-Man just punch him right in the face and just go, "What are you calling for? It took you 5 hours to get that sentence out."
He had to use the word seize. It could have been take, grab,
Exactly.
seize.
Exactly.
Seize.
Uh, it's
All right.
there was an episode of Venture Brothers where the Brock Sampson was like beating up somebody, and
Yeah.
it takes them forever to like oh, why would you do that? And that's how it would feel
Yeah.
to listen to it. I'd rather hear him beating the crap out and just have the statement ow, 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 and doing all that kind of stuff. I'd be laughing hard, like not at it. I'd be laughing with it by that point.
Sure. Sure. All right.
So
Let's
here we
let's go.
are.
Let's go ahead and finish this up right quick.
Once he had defeated the Snake Men, He-Man untied the barge and sailed away from Snake Mountain. As the barge drifted away from the mountain, He-Man gave a mighty yell. He-Man's shout was so loud, it caused a small earthquake. The stone walls of the river cave collapsed in a thunderous roar.
That will seal up the cave forever,
Said He-Man as the barge floated away safely.
King Hiss and his snake men won't be using this cave for a long, long time. I should have never doubted my own feelings when I sensed danger. That's one mistake I won't make again.
And they used the wrong theme music to send us out with, Sean.
I know. I'm disappointed there. I'm disappointed that his answer to the solution, or his answer to the problem, is yelling,
Yeah.
because that's something He-Man does all the time.
Oh.
That it made me think of Michael Jackson, the thing with his.
Yeah.
Just the ending of that, like John Braden did amazing on that first LP, and this
Yeah.
one, it's like I feel like he probably was just given, you got to work with this stuff, see what you can come up with, and he did a slow burn of a story, like I said, and it just there was elements of it that it worked to an extent, but then there's more that doesn't work for me than not in this case.
Yeah. For me, it was. Yeah, I appreciate it for it being the slow burn. It was the horror story. It was the creeping under the castle.
Yeah.
It was, the shadows and the underground. But yeah, this ending, like if it had just culminated in like this battle between He-Man and the Snake Men, I would have been good with that. And it's funny too because I remember He-Man collapsing in the cave, but it wasn't until I revisited it that I'm like, oh, he did it by yelling. I forgot that part. I would have just assumed that he, hit the side or caused, rocks to collapse. Like why yelling there? There's
Yeah.
plenty of ways to collapse this tunnel without doing it that way. So,
Yep.
but yeah, for me, it's the art. The art really propels this one into the memory banks for me. And like I said, the story premise is so creepy, and I think the Snake Men were done well up until they just turned snivelly at the end there.
Well, this is also one of those stories we were just talking about, the whole, back in the 80s it was a big deal that parents were worried about their kids getting kidnapped and
Yep.
stranger danger and stuff like that. So like this whole book, I can almost see one more page added in. You
Yeah.
see Orko on today's story, we learn to trust your instincts because if something doesn't feel right, there's a chance someone's going to sneak through your window and steal you away in the middle of the night. Till next time, it's got that kind of a vibe to it. So it's like I don't mind that it did that because it does have that feeling of, well, He-Man also had to deal with something like that, and unfortunately he's not like a kid where the kid's going to probably be in worse danger. He's He-Man, but but it does have that moral of the day thing that makes me go, well, you can see the Filmation influence through that part of the story, but like Filmation had more action on any episode than this thing at the same time. So
all things considered, I'm gonna go a 7 out of 10. It's the nostalgia and the art propels it up there high enough for me.
I'm gonna do a 5 because of the art and the narrator and the production value on this, but everything else, whew. So
fair enough. Hey, 5's not bad. It's better than some of the stuff we reviewed on here.
That's true.
All right.
Multiverse.
Netflix.
Yeah, that too.
So let's head back here.
Remastering their universe.
Alright, it's time for everybody's favorite segment of the show, Remastering Their Universe. So today we are taking a look at the Golden Book, The Trap. And this one was written by W.B. Dubé, and it was illustrated by Dan Spiegel. And this was published in 1983. And so for those of you who might have missed a few episodes, Remastering Their Universe is where we take a story that we feel didn't quite have the power, and we try and make some adjustments to help it out. So we'll take a story that the fans didn't necessarily like. We want to try and stay within the confines of the general story and see if we can find a way to make it better in our opinions. And so this one here, it's a pretty simple story. It starts off He-Man, or Stratos is flying. He finds He-Man passed out on the beach, I think it was. And when he wakes him up, he says that Skeletor attacked him to try and get his half of the power sword, but something scared Skeletor off, and Skeletor dropped the dark half of the power sword, so now He-Man has the full power sword. Stratos and He-Man decide to go to Castle Grayskull to enter it and get the power, because this is still that early storyline here. And they make it in, but there's all sorts of weird traps and everything trying to get the best of him. And it turns out that Skeletor really made it into the castle. He took He-Man's half of the power sword and left He-Man 2 fake halves. And so Skeletor was behind the scenes controlling all the traps all the time, trying to kill He-Man. And then Skeletor ends up defeating He-Man in combat, but before he can kill him, the power sword magically splits apart again for no reason, and He-Man whacks him with a door, and they go running off. And He-Man and Stratos are good. It's a very short story. It's a very weirdly drawn story. Sean, what's the first thing you would do with this, as you kind of gave a teaser already last week?
I did give a teaser. I would find an artist that actually was drawing masters the way they looked, because I remember as a kid that artist had a newspaper strip. I don't know the
Yeah.
name of it, unfortunately, but it was one of those like Rex Hunter MD or something like that. It was one of the
Oh,
medical
really?
ones, or like a detective or a police one, and it was one where I'd see his art in the paper because I'd be looking at the comics I want to look at, but there it'd be. And as a kid, I was like, why are they letting him draw this? And even today,
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of like He-Man has wavy hair. That looks a little odd because He-Man doesn't really have if I think of He-Man, I think of like if I wanted to draw him in a now way, his hair would be tousled, but
Yeah.
this is like no, this is like curly hair, and that's a little odd. And even the way that the harness is drawn, it reminds me of like the little Dutch boy or something, which is
Right.
not helping because of the haircut for the filmation. It's all bad stuff in the way I view how not to do it, I guess. I will say though, his take on He-Man doesn't work, but I actually didn't mind his take on Skeletor, and I thought Stratus wasn't all that bad. But
Yeah. It
just
depends
when
on
you
the
have He-Man as the
panel.
main guy.
Yeah, it's very inconsistent throughout. And yeah, now that you mention that, it does very much have like a newspaper comic strip feel to it. Um, and that's a big part. He-Man's harness tucks into his waistband like they're suspenders. It's like
It's
you
like
did
Lederhosen.
yeah, you didn't even know what these kids like. Obviously, he was shown a couple figures, and they're like, draw this story, you know?
Yeah, it had that vibe of you have somebody that is established in the way he draws everything, and I don't know how he got involved. This is, I think, the only time that I remember him doing anything with He-Man,
Right.
and I'm guessing this is a really wild guess, but I'm guessing they might have thought his style looked like the brand style for Masters. Like if you
Yeah.
look at the lunchbox and stuff,
Yeah.
like the old blue lunchbox. Like I actually have that on the floor over here. There is a little vibe of
hmm
that style. So I think they had this. Well, it kind of looks like the house style we're using to promote the brand, like the blankets and the sheets and everything.
Right.
But it doesn't work for me.
No, I agree, and that's the thing. It probably looks almost the most toy accurate. Besides the harness, like the hair and everything, it looks very like he took the toy and he drew it. But
Hmm.
that doesn't work for me because Masters always went above and beyond. In their artwork, making you feel it was real. They could get past all the limitations of the toy. I mean, that cover art there is amazing.
Hmm.
Setting it up. But unfortunately, it's not even close to what we got inside. Even though it is still the guy who likes to draw the furry underwear like they're just plain, you know, underwear. But
Yeah, there's that too.
um,
That that cover is one of the more iconic covers too,
oh
because I
yeah,
remember, like as a kid, that that one had to be the most violent of them all because I've never seen other than the LP where Skeletor's
yeah,
getting thrown off the parapet of Grayskull and He-Man's doing his Captain Morgan screaming thing. It's like this one, you're actually seeing him flat out looking like I'm done with this. Like he
right,
just looks like he's ready for Skeletor to get split in half with that door.
exactly,
And so it always stuck in my mind, like, man, that feels really violent even for He-Man,
hmm
and I love that for it.
right.
But when you see that cover, it's like this does not compute when you open it up and everything else in it looks the way it looks.
hmm So as for the actual story, um, I think number one is you have to actually give He-Man both halves of the power sword in this. Take out the whole Skeletor playing the fake thing because it doesn't make sense with the story. Because how could Skeletor create, you know, two halves that still did the magical joining, even though they're the
Hmm.
fake one? Like that doesn't it doesn't work. You can't have the two halves while a toy would just like connect them together. It in in universe, it was actually supposed to be like a magical thing. The two swords became one. You
Yeah.
know, so how did Skeletor create two magical halves to replicate the actual magical half? It's it's the same thing as the DC comic. It's too convoluted. Make it simple. Have Skeletor. Don't even need Skeletor jumping him here. Have what I would do in this opening here is have Beastman attacking him with Skeletor's half of the power sword, and have Stratos come along and scare Beastman off, and he drops the power sword, okay? His half. And then after that, it's Beastman and Skeletor waiting for them to enter Grayskull so they can sneak in too. So you still got because I like the trap premise where they think they've got the key to Castle Grayskull, they're going to take it over finally. I like that part. And then it turns out that Skeletor, was messing around with everything before them, but you need a way to get the scenes believable where it's not like an about face at the end.
Yeah, I like that idea actually. The whole trap is them getting to Grayskull and letting them into Grayskull versus because this is one that like I remember it from my childhood pretty vividly. Other than I hated the artwork, I don't know how the heck I remember this one so vividly.
Right.
But the premise of it with them going through all the different things, it reminds me looking back on like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where it's like he has to go through all the different things at the end to get to the Grail, and it's kind of like I kind of like that idea that you're setting up where it's like, okay, Skeletor and Beastman know there's these things they got to get through, but there's a chance they could die doing it. So we'll let He-Man go in front of us, and he just goes through all of them, and he activates them, and then it's not an issue for them to get through it or whatever and figure out what the strategy is to it or whatever, and then move forward. And then if he dies, they still get Grayskull. And if he gets to the end, they still could come in and maybe try to get the upper hand on him somehow using the technology in Grayskull still. Because that picture of Skeletor turning around with all the monitors always amused me as a kid. I was like, is he watching the news? Like as a kid, it didn't register. Now it's like that's the first thing I think because that was my initial reaction when I was a child.
Right. Yeah, and no, that's exactly what I'm going. So basically, Skeletor decides like I'm tired of fighting He-Man and trying to get his half. I'm just gonna give him my half. But if he thinks it's a trap, he's not gonna go there. So. But yeah, other than that, once you do that to me, then you go through just like it is. Because even that shot that you said about the monitor, that was actually an illusion to try and get them to fall into a pit. So that could still be, that could be just the castle's defenses. Like, oh, we're going to show him his greatest enemy. This early castle seemed to kind of feed into people's fears and everything. So it could still show Skeletor, there, like just the castle. Like, we're going to show him his greatest enemy and see if we can get him to jump into this pit, Like I said, for me, this whole middle part works. I don't know about you, where they're actually going through the castle. Like I wouldn't change about anything there. I like the dragon that was an illusion and the pit and everything else. It's very early Castle Grayskull.
I always liked early Castle Grayskull because there is something really mysterious about the idea of around every corner there's something, a booby trap or a monster or something. I mean, we had those the sticker with the hands coming out of the grating in the dungeon and stuff. So you never know what's in this place. And I always pictured it as being a very dark, very mysterious, very solemn kind of area. And it's like, it's the equivalent of you're walking into a haunted house, for lack of a better way. So, you see them going through all these things, and I really do like the setup. And honestly, I would have liked to see something even a little more spooky than some of the stuff. Like the dragon to me was like, there's a dragon in Grayskull now? Like that part was a little weird because I'm thinking, tight quarters, how big is Gray? It's like you're thinking of the spatial relations and stuff like that. And then when you're finding, I think the other thing that to me was a little bit of a letdown when I was a kid was everything becomes an illusion.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted it to be, no, these are these are the fail-safes in Grayskull to make people run away from it or whatever, and they're not just illusions. Maybe it's like one of them comes from a door that opens to a different dimension, like the sorceress would do with the mirror or whatever. And granted, it's a storybook. It's not meant to be that in depth, but there is an element of I really would have liked to see something a little deeper than just here's one page where this dragon shows up, for instance, and then the next page you just see here's He-Man. The sword goes through it. Boom. That's the end of it. You know.
Yeah, mix it up a little bit. Like the Banshee could be real, but the dragon was fake. Like you keep you on your toes. You don't know what to expect. Is it going to be real this time? Is it going to be fake? You know. Yeah, and I do like that. I do like that. Give it a little more legitimate thread in there too, along with the illusions. And that actually kind of sets up my next point even better than I could have, because I was going to say the one thing I would do is actually make He-Man and Stratos actually get caught in a trap. And that's how Skeletor ends up taking the sword from He-Man. Like he drops it or whatever. Because that's my next thing is Skeletor now gets the actual power sword. And so, like, if they went through all these illusions and then they came up against this Banshee and it's like, oh, it's just an illusion, Stratos, but it wasn't. And then, it's able to incapacitate them. And Skeletor just waltzes in, takes a sword, and is going to go take over Grayskull, And then you need He-Man to actually fight off this creature to go confront Skeletor.
Yeah.
Now you're actually giving some stakes.
Sure. I mean, the other way that it could be done is the actual things in Grayskull are the illusions, but then that puts He-Man and Stratos in a, well, that was an illusion. Well, this was an illusion. So when they go up against whatever the next one is, then it's like, it's not an illusion. And all of a sudden, He-Man's getting grabbed from behind or something by the Banshee or by something else. He drops the sword because he's surprised because nothing else has attacked him at this point.
Right.
And that's when you see Skeletor's hand picking it up, and it's, he's got all the power right there. And so it's like you got a twofold thing of He-Man now has to figure out how to get out of the trap, like you're saying, which I like. And then on top of that, then it's like, well, then Skeletor's got the upper hand, and he's got to solve that problem too.
Exactly. No, and then after that, to me, it's almost like it is, except for, and I'll read this part here, because this part made absolutely no sense to me. I reread this quite a few times today. Swinging his sword of power, Skeletor shattered He-Man's powerless weapon. Okay. Then as Skeletor raised the magic blade for the final blow, it was struck by lightning. Waves of electricity shocked the startled Skeletor. Once again, the power sword was split in two. Where'd that come from? Like, so the castle just senses that Skeletor's about to win and just like, nope, boom,
Yeah. There's an element of that I like. It should have been established in the story somewhere. Like it should have, like, remember going back to the LP again, because that one did a nice job of setting up something where you had the spirit of Grayskull doing ooh and all, and the idea of this book, out of all of the golden books, actually had a chance of doing some pretty creepy stuff if it would have gone there.
Yeah.
And it didn't go there. And again, it starts. It all comes down to the art style just does not fit this book.
No.
This art style would have maybe worked in a different book where maybe he wasn't in Grayskull, and you needed somebody who could have done a spookier, darker kind of style for this one in particular. But if they would have set it up with the woo thing and all that kind of stuff, and then going into it, like maybe while He-Man's running through his paces, maybe they have just one little moment where like Skeletor is trying to do something and it's like the castle won't let him.
Yeah.
or whatever, because He-Man is the champion and he is the one. At that point, I guess he wasn't the one sitting by the power of Grayskull
No.
yet in the actual the canon. But it is the idea. Well, he's supposed to be the champion. He's that guy, and so even the castle's defenses are even against Skeletor here in some ways because he snuck in. That could be part of it, and that's as simple right there. Boom, he snuck in. He wasn't meant to belong in there.
Yeah, if they had set that up, I would have accepted it. But to me, it's like it's more. This is very much the neutral Castle Grayskull is how it feels reading it. That's my biggest problem with it. And for the lightning, like I said, the lightning bolt, it wasn't even like even if they'd been earlier, like He-Man and Stratos had to dodge lightning bolts. It's like okay, that makes sense. Like they're back in that part of the castle now. Tied it back to something, but it's just like out of nowhere, it's like Skeletor's about to win. It's like boom, and then He-Man can do the door trick, which doesn't look as cool in the book as it did on the cover.
Oh, it really is lacking in the book.
Yeah, but basically that's what's left for me. Find a way to tie it back. I like your idea about it being the castle's defenses. It could be because he snuck in. Even do it, like I said, just go back to an earlier area, have the dragon make him, distracted or something. Or you could even do, because they got the whole door thing, they really leaned on that door thing. Like, they really felt they had to get it in there as the winning blow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, make it from Stratos in He-Man's earlier going through the castle, like they knew a secret passage, and so they got on the side of a door that Skeletor wasn't expecting and busted out at him.
Mm-hmm.
Some way to tie it back there.
Yeah, there could have been basically, it does create a storm. Like there is that whole, it's a tornado or whatever when Skeletor disappears, the illusion version. And it talks about the wind coming through and all that stuff. And it's like, well, how far-fetched would that have been to say, okay, it's this giant storm that's wrecking the inside of it because they're not supposed to be in there and all that kind of stuff. The other option I like is, well, it would be kind of cool if He-Man was going toe-to-toe with him and he's got the full power sword. And then out of nowhere, like that bolt comes in and it, like you said, could have been one of the tests leading up to that point.
Yeah.
And Stratos comes in smiling going, I just hit the button on the wall again. He's like, we went through it and we hit the button so that we knew that it was going to happen. And I hit the button again and just lucky us, like it ended up saving him instead of killing him earlier or whatever. And that would have been a kind of fun way to do it. I think Filmation probably would have done it that way.
Oh, absolutely.
If they would have had that story.
And I think you're right. Looking back at now, that is I guess I will give it that. That is the room that He-Man hit Skeletor into, is that one with that storm. So I guess that is where the lightning came from. It's just weird that it wasn't. Okay, so in that case, just mention it earlier. Because I think all I mentioned was like howling wind and stuff.
And I wouldn't classify it as a storm, but it did say about the wind. It would have been kind of cool to say
flash, thunder boomed. Okay, so
all right.
I guess it was, but it wasn't presented well at the end there, I guess. So clean that up a little bit, and definitely make it like their adventure through the castle prepared them for this. And other than that, keep the ending the same because we're in the two halves era, so you want that sword to split back. You want He-Man to leave with the good half, Skeletor to leave with the bad half. But
I think the. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the thing that I think would have been kind of fun for the ending is he takes the door and hits him and he knocks him out the window. Yeah. Because they have it like, okay, the two Beastman and him just fall, and that's pretty much the end of it. It would have been cool to be like, no, you're not even in the castle anymore at the end of this story. Like you got inside and we're getting you out, and that's why he takes the door and does what he does,
Well, that's actually what I was about to say. I was going to say end it with them outside of the castle. Because once the power swords split, you end this here. Skeletor's falling down a pit. Beastman's running away, and He-Man and Stratos are just standing there. So everyone's still in the castle. So once you open it once, you're allowed in. To me, it should be like, okay, knock him out the window, and then Skeletor or Stratos and He-Man leave. And because that's the one big thing about this era is everything's got to reset at the end of it. You've got to come out of the castle. It's not the same thing as it will eventually become.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be my final thing. Like you get them outside of the castle at the end. Do the door thing out the window. I love that. That's a great idea.
I just like the idea of just him, because the idea of that cover and that it's like, well, Skeletor isn't gonna like get smacked into a wall. He's getting shoved out a window using the door. That'd be pretty cool.
Right.
So
no, I like it.
I like that version better anyway.
I mean, that
remastered.
That was actually a really easy remaster. And see, guys, this book gets a ton of grief. It has for many years. But that's the thing with this stuff. Some of this stuff is just like an editor away from possibly being something very good. I'm loving this segment, man. That was a good one. I like that. It flowed.
That was the lightest lifting we've had to do so far. But honestly, when you actually think of how the story would have gone, it really is a better story in my opinion. There's no way around it. It's more concise, and besides the artwork, the whole part with He-Man joining the Power Swords was something that mystified me as a kid, going like, how? Because if later in the story they're telling you they're not even the right things, why would that even happen? And that drove me crazy way back when.
Right.
So,
he should have known immediately. It's not like this is the first time they ever combined the Power Sword. He's done it 20 times by now. He should know what it does, and everything. So. Nope. I agree completely. I think we nailed that one.
Yep. Remastered.
All right. Well, anything you got to wrap us up with here, Sean?
The only thing I could think of, because now I'm thinking of these things, is apparently, although I think it's sold out pretty quickly, Mondo has released the San Diego Comic-Con, what would have been San Diego Comic-Con, the Merman exclusive, and a lot of people just were like, why would you want this? Because they don't like the color scheme. So, but apparently it got sold out. So there you go.
I didn't even look at it. Man, Arms is still available. I haven't seen Merman on here.
That's one of those things. The Mondos, if He-Man looked better, I might have actually been very, very tempted, but I still don't like that face sculpt on him at all.
Yeah.
Man-at-Arms looks amazing. He's probably the one that I would get the most out of the whole line right now.
See, I still don't care for him. Oh, yeah, he did sell out. What do you know?
I think, I will be honest, I think the only figures they have to go on for that line right now that if they released them and they wowed me would be either Teela or She-Ra, and that's coming from a person that hasn't really watched much She-Ra, so there you go. But these designs make me go, well, what would they do with those characters then?
Yeah. Like, it's not that I hate them, it's not quite what I pictured, I guess. Especially the human characters so far. He-Man and Man-Arms have been my two most lacking. I've got the Skeletor, he's really cool. Scareglow, they just did the wrong way. He should have been... They did him predominantly black instead of predominantly white, which really screwed up the look of him, in my opinion. Merman looks cool, but this San Diego exclusive is ugly as all get out. It's like a oily, rainbowy pearl. Well, I don't even know. What would you even describe? As someone who works with art, what would you describe that color as?
I almost would describe it as like a hologram color. It reminds me of like something from the 80s. Very, like, depending where the light hits it, you're going to get all these rainbows of colors coming out of the figure. Yeah. Although I don't think that's the intention, but
I don't know what
like Prisma or I don't even know the best way to describe. I looked at it and it didn't make me angry, and it didn't really I wanted to talk badly about it, but I was like, that really isn't like an exclusive to me. I know some people, it's like, oh, a repaint or whatever, but that one was just like, out of all of them, you chose that one, and that's how you did it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's like that
it-
designer con Skeletor they did. It was the same thing. It was all these weird, like, bright colors, and it's like, okay. But if I'm gonna spend that kind of money, I'm gonna go get the regular, well, the Mondo exclusive Merman for
Yeah.
$75 less, and he looks wicked cool. So
Yeah.
that's just me. For those of you who like that sort of thing, I'm glad you got it.
Or if they wanted to really go crazy, Disco Skeletor. Just throw him out there for SDCC. Just be done with it.
Yeah,
Then there is a Disco Skeletor other than 2000X.
that one gets too much love.
I'm just thinking when it comes to the variety with the colors, it's like that one's one where it's like, just do it then. Just be done with it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it has to be done, but it's like when I see that merman, it's like, okay. So what else you got going for you this year? So.
Oh, crazy. Well,
Other than that, vote when the next bracket hits. Like you said, hopefully tomorrow.
I'm assuming.
Vote.
I'm assuming
We'll
it
see what
probably will be.
happens.
Yep, get out there, vote, make your opinion be heard. Otherwise, you can't cry about it afterwards.
Yep, exactly.
And I'll run through our usual spiel here. Look, everybody, we appreciate you tuning in. We love all the feedback we've gotten. Give us some more. Hit those buttons down below. There's a like, there's a share, there's a subscribe. Help us help you. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what you enjoy, what you don't. Feedback is always great. Leave a comment. Visit our Facebook page. And just let us know. Let us know what you're liking. And we'll keep delivering this quality content week after week. There we go. So, until next time.
Until next time.